And then I found out my colleagues felt I had disrespected them. At work, we're told we need to be respectful. Here's the thing, for us to be respectful, we have to agree on what respect means. You and I can agree on what respect feels like, to feel seen, heard, appreciated. Yet, we might disagree on what respect looks like. For example, some people think deep probing questions is a sign of respect and engagement. For others, it's considered inappropriate or even intrusive. I'm Dr. Julie Pham, and today I'm going to talk about how having conscious respect at work starts with appreciating how respect is relative. I founded a company that helps people practice curiosity in the workplace. Core to our work is my framework and book, 7 Forms of Respect, which is about how to get curious around the different ways people define respect. I've witnessed and experienced directly myself how relationships and communication can crumble when we assume we mean the same thing by respect. My personal and professional experiences have helped me get curious about respect in my own life. Growing up as a Vietnamese American and having lived in multiple countries, I know that culture can influence how we interpret respect. In my work as a community organizer, I've brought people from different backgrounds together to collaborate on similar goals. I've witnessed how friction can inevitably emerge when we have different ideas of how we want to be treated. From supporting a wide range of organizations, I've seen we'll never be perfectly respectful, despite our efforts. The best we can do is make time to practice curiosity around respect. I developed the 7 Forms of Respect framework to give you a language to describe what you mean by respect. To help you remember what these 7 forms of respect are, use the acronym PICCA, P-P-I-C-C-A-A. It stands for procedure, punctuality, information, candor, consideration, acknowledgement, and attention. This isn't like the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People where you strive for all 7. It's more like the 5 love languages. Some forms matter to you and others don't. Rather than saying, I want you to respect me, you can say, these are my forms of respect. What are yours? While there are some behaviors that go against company policy or are even illegal, most actions can't be defined as absolutely right or wrong. Respect has nuance. It can mean different things to different people. You can't assume people want to be respected the same way you do. That's why having curiosity around respect matters. When I approach others with curiosity, they reciprocate with curiosity. This builds goodwill, trust, and empathy in the workplace and beyond. At the start of this talk, I told you I unintentionally disrespected a group of my colleagues. In that particular situation, I asked them a question that I thought would help us get to know each other better. I found out secondhand some of them thought my question was intrusive. And then I realized they felt I had invaded their boundaries. In my case, I wanted to get respect in the form of information. They didn't think that information was appropriate to give. The point is, we often assume we want respect the same way. Yet, respect is actually relative. To appreciate how relative and subjective respect can be, we just have to get curious about what informs how we think about respect. I've worked as a historian and as a journalist. These professions required me to ask deep and sometimes personal questions that helped me uncover interesting stories. I carried that approach into other parts of my life. When I tell you that about myself, you understand that I don't mean to be nosy. Asking probing questions was just part of my previous career that made me successful. You'll also remember this story much more than if I were just to say, information matters to me. When you attach a story or personal detail to why a certain form of respect matters to you, people are much more likely to relate to you. Ask yourself and ask others, what experiences in your life have informed how you think about respect? When you take the time to share stories, you are practicing curiosity. As a result, you and your colleagues will remember why certain forms of respect matter to one another. Now that I have planted this idea that respect is relative, I want to challenge a major assumption about respect in the workplace. The Gallup poll has been measuring how respected people feel at work since 2018. In 2025, poll results show only 37% of people feel respected at work, an all-time low. This implies if people don't feel respected, they feel disrespected. That is, if I don't like how I'm being treated, well, it could only mean I'm being disrespected. Assuming there is nothing illegal or against company policy in play, I offer some other reasons that could explain what's happening when you don't feel respected. There's disrespect, and there's lack of respect in the forms that matter to you. I define disrespect here as intentional, like when someone is doing something that you don't like after you told them not to. So you have to ask yourself, when you feel disrespected, do you think that person was intentionally disrespecting you? Or do you think that they just weren't giving you respect in the forms that matter to you? Perhaps they were just treating you the way they would like to be treated. Or perhaps they just don't know you that well, so they don't know how you want to be respected. Or perhaps you have explicitly condoned that behavior you find disrespectful. For example, you keep telling them that it's okay that they're late, though it really bothers you. I've introduced this framework to teams who then talk about respect differently. One client told me right after they were introduced to the 7 forms of respect, the organization's leadership launched an unpopular policy. In the past, the staff would have said they felt disrespected by the policy itself. With the 7 forms framework, they were able to express how they wanted to get respect. They suggested delivering such big news openly and across multiple channels, instead of just being buried in a long email update sent on a Friday afternoon. It was much easier for leadership to accept this feedback on how to communicate differently next time versus changing the policy itself. Thinking about respect as having different forms means we assume there's a desire to respect one another. Instead of dwelling on whether we feel respected or disrespected, we can share how we want respect to be communicated. Early on in my research, I asked people how they wanted to be treated at work. They said, with respect. When I asked them to explain what respect means, they brought up the golden rule. The golden rule is treat people the way you want to be treated. But what if people don't want to be treated the way you want to be treated? And then there's the platinum rule. Treat people the way they want to be treated. But what if you don't want to treat them the way they want to be treated? So there's what I call the rubber band rule. It reflects how we are all stretchy. I want to respect you, so I'm going to stretch for you, even though I'm kind of ambivalent about the way you prefer to receive respect. And sometimes you're at work and there are group forms of respect that you don't particularly care for yourself. For example, if you had your way, maybe you would multitask in front of other people, which means you don't prioritize giving attention. Yet, you're on a team that does prioritize attention. So you stretch to give respect in the form that matters to the group. You know what happens when you have to stretch and stretch and stretch to accommodate someone else's preferences? You can snap and break. So the rubber band rule is about identifying what are your breaking points? What's going to make you snap? And that is different for everyone. When you feel yourself being stretched and you're about to snap, just pause and step away so you have time to think about how you can express your own needs. If not getting to multitask is going to make your rubber band snap, perhaps you can tell your colleagues, I need to be able to multitask because it's really difficult for me to focus on one thing at a time. I start to feel anxious and self-conscious. when I'm just sitting and listening. Let me know if that will be a problem. Share the story of why this form of respect matters, or in this case, doesn't matter, to you. Being able to articulate what matters to you is about self-respect. It requires you to practice inward curiosity. You can't expect other people to know how you want respect if you can't articulate it yourself. Also, if you find yourself snapping all the time while everyone else is comfortably stretching for each other, this might not be the right workplace culture for you. The rubber band rule can help you identify that. I've got one more mental model to help you understand how respect is relative. To describe how respect lives in an organization, I like to use the analogy of language. There is a national language of respect that is spoken across the whole organization. That means there's a shared expectation of the forms of respect you prioritize when interacting with each other in all staff communications. Different departments define respect differently. Just think about how the marketing, finance, and engineering functions differ. I liken the forms of respect each of those departments prioritize to different regional dialects. And then there are the individuals within an organization, like you. You have your own preferences. The individuals who can be multilingual will be the most successful in any organization. There is no one-size-fits-all permanent approach to respect because people and organizations evolve and change. Answer these questions to determine what might be influencing the forms of respect you and your organization decide to prioritize. What is your role and function in your organization? What industry is your organization in? How large is your organization? What stage are you at? An early stage tech startup with 5 employees might not prioritize procedure as a form of respect the way a 100-year-old government agency with 100,000 employees would need to. The context you're in can influence which forms of respect are prioritized. Taking the time to get curious about respect leads to conscious respect in the workplace. That same Gallup study shows that employees who feel engaged at work are 5 times more likely to strongly agree that they feel respected at work. When people feel respected, you get more productivity, creativity, and collaboration. We often assume how we want respect is how other people want respect. Sometimes we're not aware we have different definitions until friction emerges. Earlier, I shared how my colleagues felt disrespected by me because I asked them that probing question. This is what I asked. What do you like and dislike the most about each of your parents? When you hear my question, you might think, whoa, that is nosy. Or you might think, that's all. Different people will react differently to the same thing. Remember my rubber band rule? We all need to stretch a bit for each other at work. Yet, I don't want to push others to stretch themselves to the point of snapping to accommodate my preference for respect. In this case, I realized knowing how my colleagues felt about their parents wasn't necessary to getting our work done. I was okay with not getting what I personally like once I realized it made others uncomfortable. So, I went directly to my colleagues, acknowledged that I had upset them, and I apologized. I also asked them to give me that constructive feedback directly in the future because collectively, prioritizing candor as a form of respect would support our shared work together. The point is to have a workplace in which more people feel respected. We need to make time to learn how each of us wants respect differently. While we all have to stretch a bit, we can get to a shared alignment around what forms of respect we prioritize when we're working together. Conscious respect at work means none of us is constantly stretching so much that we're about to snap. It requires getting curious about how we individually and then collectively define how we want respect. Remember, respect is relative.